Okay, so for question number 1, we have this skier going downhill. Okay, he slides down the first part of the slope at 16 meters per second for 20 seconds. Okay, the second part is steeper, so he travels 250 meters in 12.5 seconds. We're looking for the average speed of the skier. Okay, so here's what we have to do. All right, we have to write down our givens, but we have to split it up into part 1 and into part 2 and then into the total, because this is going to be one of those average velocity is total displacement over total time type questions. All right, so for part 1, we have that the average velocity is 16 meters per second downhill. Okay, and then that happens for 20 seconds. And then for part 2, okay, we have a displacement of 250 meters down the hill, okay, and that happens in 12.5 seconds. Since everything is down the hill, I'm not going to bother writing the vectors on here, but I will put a vector on my answer when I'm finished, okay, just because they're all the same direction, it doesn't matter till the end. All right, if I'm going to have total displacement over total time, I still need the displacement for part 1, but for right now, you can give them 1 mark for their givens. Okay, and the next thing they're going to get a mark for is for calculating the distance or the displacement for part 1. Okay, so d equals v times t, that's 16 times 20, okay, which is going to be 320 meters. Okay, so you can give them a mark for that as well. Okay, and actually I'll give them a mark here too if they showed their work and did all that. If they didn't show their work on this one, still give them that mark if they have the 320, but from now on, show all your work. Okay, every step is worth something. All right, now that we have that information, now we can go over and start on our totals here. So average velocity is total displacement over total time. Hopefully they got that written somewhere. Okay, and so that's going to mean then for us that we will have 250 plus 320, okay, over 12.5 plus 20. Okay, so in other words, we have 570 over 32.5. Okay, so what are we up to? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll say 5 if they have some combination of that math right there. Okay, and then so for our final mark here, okay, our average velocity is going to be 570 divided by 32.5, okay, which gives us 17.538. However, if we go back to the question, we only have 2 significant digits here. That means I'm going to need to round this to 18. All right, so my average velocity is going to be 18 meters per second downhill. Okay, here's the thing on quizzes, guys. Well, anywhere. I don't give half marks. Okay, so if on their answer they're missing downhill or they have the wrong number of significant figures, they don't get their mark for the answer. They can have all their mark for the work all the way along the way, but if they don't have a vector and they don't have the right significant digits, they don't have the answer right, and thus it is just 100% wrong. Okay.
Do you need the vector because it's speed?
Sorry, did it ask for speed? It asked for speed. Forget the part about the vector. Sorry. I was just thinking I had velocity on my brain. Doesn't matter. Don't need the vector. Good point. Okay, but they do need the right number of significant figures, and they need units. If it doesn't have meters per second, it's also wrong, because it could be anything then. All right, so it's out of 6. That first one's out of 6, so give them a mark out of 6 there. Okay, now we'll have a look at number 2. Okay, so for number 2, it's a position versus time graph, so there's actually very little work here. Okay, all we have to do is find the total displacement and the total time, which we can read right off the graph. All right, so here's what they're going to get. Average velocity, okay, is total displacement over total time. They can have a mark for that, because hopefully that's in there somewhere. All right, that's going to mean that we had to read 2 numbers off the graph. The total displacement is -20. The total time is 9 seconds. They can have a mark for that. All right, so our average velocity over the whole trip has only one significant figure, because on this graph there's only one thing down here on the x-axis. Okay, so we are going to have -2. Actually, sorry, not -2. We're going to have 2 meters per second south. How did I know it was south? It says north on the graph. I'm going to let that one go this time, okay? But in the future, make sure you look at a graph carefully so that you don't miss key things like vectors on a graph that might be important, okay? So 1 mark for that and 1 mark for their answer. That one's out of 3. The whole thing is out of 9, okay? So give them a mark out of 9. Write it clearly at the top where I can see it, please. Hand it back to them so they can see it. And then I will take them all handed in on top of the Chromebook cart. And as you come up and hand in your quiz, grab yourself a Chromebook.